Disclaimer up front, I am not a mineralogist. I'm not a crystallographer. I just know a little bit, and I probably learnt some stuff as well in pulling this together. So we'll see how we go.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
All right, so just a bit of an introduction. There's 7 crystal systems, and the isometric is, or also known as cubic, is one of those. That's the one we'll be focusing on tonight. And the others being hexagonal, trigonal, orthorhombic, monoclinic, tetragonal, and triclinic. When I first got interested in minerals, I joined the Nunawading Club in Melbourne, and they did these little sort of mini talks, and they got people to stand up and obviously prepare, stand up and actually do a presentation on something. And the one that I actually got to do was on, which I chose, was monoclinic crystal system. And I did it because I didn't know anything about it. So it's not a bad way of actually going about this sort of thing. All right, there's 32 classes as well. So we've got 7 systems and 32 classes. And in each crystal system, there can be a number of classes. Each crystal system and class is distinguished from the others by its own elements of symmetry. We'll have a look at that in a minute. And then what I've done is I've drawn on a bit on articles that Don Peck put together, which are on Mindat and assisted by Erin. And in particular, the one on symmetry is determining the symmetry of crystals, an introduction, and the link is there, which you'll be able to get from the video when I put it up. And I've actually used quite a bit of their information in pulling this together. Okay, so first thing is center of symmetry. And how you define that is, if you look on the right-hand side, you've got an axonite crystal, and then further to right, where the C is the center of symmetry. And what you do is you draw an imaginary line from this top corner here to this bottom corner here, this top corner here down to this bottom corner here, and so on. And where they join is the center of symmetry. And that's important if you're then looking at a crystal, if you're turning it around to determine how much symmetry that particular crystal has. It's based around rotating on that particular point. And then you have a plane of symmetry. And again, on the right-hand side, we've got a fluorite cube there. And you've got 3 planes of symmetry shown here. So the blue one is one. And then you've got one which goes from corner to corner. So that one there. And then you've got another one that goes through this set of faces here. And that gives you 3 separate planes. And a plane, the plane of symmetry is, if you have a crystal that you split into 2, one half should be the mirror of the other half, the mirror image of the other half. That's why it's called a mirror plane. We then have an axis of symmetry, and in this particular instance, it's where you can rotate the crystal. And if we've got a cube, we've got an axis of symmetry running from the center of each face. So you've got those 2 there, plus the top and bottom. You've got the angles, so that angle to that angle would be this one down to this one to this one, and so on. And then you've also got the ones that go through from the midpoint diagonally through from that edge through to that edge. And let's cover that. But then you've also got an axis of rotatory inversion, a screw axis of symmetry, and a glide plane of symmetry. And we are not going to be discussing any of those. I think the only one that I actually can understand fairly readily is the axis of rotatory inversion, which is basically where you've got 2 halves of the crystal and one half is inverted and becomes the mirror image. But like Max Smart's face there, it's a what? I'm going to leave this up just for a second. I'm not going to read through everything, but this is again in Don and Erin's article, and some useful generalizations, and they are generalizations. So, you know, there are things that that you can utilize to try and determine if you've got a particular crystal system. Excuse me. I'll just leave that there for you to have a quick read through. So you can go through in more detail when it's up on YouTube anyway. I suppose one of the interesting ones there is the last one, which is triclinic, has no axes of symmetry at all and no mirror planes. So it's not symmetrical. Once you have, if you have an ideal crystal in any of the crystal systems, and you have a look at what the symmetry should be, you can pick a lot of these things. But there's not very often an ideal crystal. So why, as mineral collectors, should we care about this? Why do we need to know? Do we get any benefits from it? And does it really matter if we don't know? And what I'm going to do at the moment is just open up to discussion. So if there is anybody that wants to throw something into the mix.
It does help with the classification of a mineral if you are not sure what it is. It can point you in that direction.
So in terms of identification, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. So it's one aspect of mineral identification. Obviously, as we know, and as we've discussed before, there are many things that you throw into the mix. I suppose to add to that, it's also a an opportunity to say what a mineral, what a crystal is not as well, because you know, it's not just an identification thing. It's also helps with, if you like, de-identification. It can't be this because it's this particular crystal system.
Yeah, I'm a bit like you, Steve, but as far as I got was the cubic system. When I start looking at the other ones, I just couldn't fathom them at all. So I'm not too bad on cubic minerals, but then again, you get something that looks cubic and it's not really. So
yes,
yeah.
We'll see a bit of that in a short while as well. All right. The only other one that I could think of, obviously that mineral identification was one, was it potentially is one way of cataloging or storing minerals in your collection as well. But I don't know anybody that does it that way. So I can't see any other benefits from it.
I think I might know somebody, but he's a crystallographer. So.
That's different. I'm talking about the average mineral collector, you know, or even people that are maybe a bit more than average collectors as well. All right, so let's move on. Let's have a look at what the data is for the isometric system. So first of all, it is called by a lot of people, and I tend to refer to it as cubic rather than isometric. It means equal measure. So each of the axes are of equal length, and the angles are all at 90 degrees. And you know what a cube looks like. If you hold a cube in your hand, Rubik's cube, for instance, or whatever, you can see that the angles are 90 degrees. You can see that each of the edges are the same length, and that's what makes it a cube. It has 4 threefold axes of rotational symmetry. So the center of the symmetry is going to be that midpoint where those 3 lines join. And then if you rotate the cube, each time you rotate it, you'll get a full axis of rotational symmetry. And it's got the highest symmetry of all of the crystal systems. Now, this is where it gets a bit tricky. So, Martin, you said you know a little bit about cubic.
that's about where I got to, I think. Yeah.
So the classes in the cubic system are the hexoctahedral, the hextetrahedral, the diploidal, gyroidal, and tetratoidal. That's a very difficult one to say. Everybody say after me, tetratoidal.
Tetratoidal.
Anyway, those are the 5 classes. Now, we're going to look at each one of these. So the hexoctahedral, oh, Paul's coming in, that's good. The hexoctahedral class, these are some of the basic shapes or habits or forms that you see in that class. And a lot of these you'd actually recognize, you know, obviously there's the cube, there's an octahedron, we've got a couple of combinations. We've got a trapezohedron over here. So you might think of, say, analcyme as an example fitting into that. Garnets. Garnets and dodecahedrons as well. This one's probably a bit tougher. This one, maybe a fluorite might fit into that. And then you can also get combinations of these forms as well. And so you'll get, one of the more common ones is a cube with an octahedron. These are the octahedral faces on the corners here. But then it might be a little bit more complex and you get a combination of cube, octahedron and dodecahedron. And these are the dodecahedral faces, as well as having the octahedral faces here. Again, some of these you will recognize in mineral specimens that you have if you look closely. You know, the garnets, obviously you've got garnets that look like that. There's probably analcymes that have got more faces that might look like that. I think I've seen this one at times as well. And if you look at the difference between, well, this one here is the dodecahedron is dominant, which is these faces, and the cube faces are fairly small. And it could be that the cube face maybe is bigger. So there's a whole range of different things that you can see. And here's some of the representative minerals that actually sit in that class. Now, I might just go back for a second. So here we've got a cube. So you'd say, okay, yes, you know, cuprite you can get in cubes, diamond you can get in cubes, fluorite you can get in cubes, magnetite and galena. What about pyrite? Pyrite you get in cubes as well, but it's not in the hexoctahedral class. So we'll come to that a bit later. Now, this one I've put there again, it's data that I'm not going to read through, but other than just pick out a couple of things, but it's there as useful information for you to look at later. Now, just to sort of follow up a little bit, you've got a hexahedron, which is the cube, and it has 6 faces. So you've got top and bottom, front and back, side and side. The octahedron has 8 faces. Then you've got others as you get more faces. You've got these ones going down here. And what you've got to look out for here is the quant habit and the 4-fold axis of symmetry and 3-fold axis of or the 3-fold axis. And here it says, you know, you get ones that are slightly modified at the edges or corners. And then these are all of the minerals, according to Mindat, that are in the hexoctahedral class. And if you actually put in that particular URL, it will give you all of these, which is quite a few. So that's probably where most of the cubic minerals actually sit. Moving along, we have the hextetrahedral class, and this is where you get the tetrahedron. So, again, you'll recognize some of the forms here. Things like tetrahedrite as an example. Obviously, that's where the mineral name. That's where the mineral name comes from. And again, you get combinations.
Also a nice example.
Yeah, exactly. Here again, you get combinations of forms where you'll get modifications here on the corners in particular. You know, that's probably a fairly common one. That's a relatively common one as well. Maybe not so much with that one. But that's a combination with the cube as well, which is interesting. So some of the representative minerals, the ones that probably come out, you know, tenantite tetrahedrite, definitely a tetrahedral. Sphalerite, you can definitely get tetrahedral, but you also get quite a few other forms. Sodalite is not one that I would have picked as being that, but then I haven't looked at sodalite crystals that closely, and I probably need to have a bit of a look at that. Again, we've got the broader description here. So the special forms, tetrahedron, which is the main one, a deltahedron.
Deltahedron.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's a typo or not. It says it does not form a crystal, but the faces modify forms of other crystals. So there's not an ideal, whatever the deltahedron looks like, you don't get in minerals in nature, other than as modifications of others. Again, we've got the cube sitting in here. The dodecahedron tetrahexahedron. And this is what you look out for, is wedge-shaped crystals, basically. And an interesting one, chalcopyrite is not in this crystal class because it's not cubic, even though you can get chalcopyrite crystals that look tetrahedral.
Mhm.
So again, here's the list of minerals that sit in the class.
Those are quite a few. Zunite was
Yeah,
there. I saw them in the end.
yeah, there's quite a few, but not as many as in the previous one. Now, diploidal, again, you might recognize some of these shapes, and I can see a pyritohedron, obviously where that name comes from. Pyrite sits in cubes with striated faces, and you can also get diploid as pyrite, which is a bit rarer than the other forms, but you can still get those. So I've got specimens that have crystals with that form.
Yeah, I got them from America somewhere, Arkansas, I guess.
We've got some Australian ones as well that yeah, you find, and sometimes they'll be flattened ones, and yeah, that's where it starts to get a bit hard to pick them because they're not the ideal shape or ideal form. And these are the main representative minerals. So you can see the list is getting a bit shorter. And it says here it's not often encountered apart from with pyrite, obviously it was very common. And again, you've got a number of separate special forms. And this is where it starts to get a little bit confusing. We have a cube as a special form here, but we had a cube as a special form in two of the others that we've already looked at as well. And this one I can understand because generally the pyrite cubes, not always, obviously the Spanish ones are a bit different, but most have striations down one face, across another face, and then the other way on the third face. And whether that makes the difference or not, I don't know, but this is the third time I've seen cube.
I'm not, so it's Paul here, how you doing?
Hey, Paul.
Not particularly concerned that there's overlap between the classes. I'm more concerned that it doesn't seem to be clear what the difference is.
Correct.
But what the definition is. So.
Absolutely correct. As I said, with pyrite, you can tell most of the time that pyrite cubes have the striations, which is quite different to the other forms. But yeah, I haven't found anywhere yet that adequately describes this for me.
I'm betting we can blame a mathematician though.
Quite possible. Anyway, again, you've got a number of different forms that sit in this class. You've got characteristic pentagonal faces for the pyritohedron in particular. This is interesting, the absence of a fourfold axis. So there must be something that's different on that. And then again, it mentions here that striations on the pyrite cubes is something to look for, but not usually the Spanish ones.
Yeah, that absence of the fourfold axis is probably key.
It is. And then down the bottom, the major problem in this class is that the pyritohedron, and even more so the diploid, are not commonly seen except on pyrite. And there's only 59 minerals in this class. Oh, Kathy's come in. So that's the full list, which is, you have a look at that, and
Actually, got
Yes.
quite a few of those.
Yeah, I can recognize a few, but I'm not sure that I would have necessarily.
No,
I
not
suppose
for
something
crystal.
like Wickmanite is one that I could probably pick as cubic, but there's a lot of those that you wouldn't, that the actual habit wouldn't make it easy to actually pick out as being in that class. Even the Wickmanite, I wouldn't have picked it for that class. So.
I've just realised that the first two are alum, and that's where I've seen that shape before.
Ah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Chemistry
Used to
side
grow
coming out.
alum crystals as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you mean as a kid?
Interesting one there is Bixbyite.
Yeah.
I mean, most Bixbyites that I know are cubes. We just go
Yeah.
back. So you have a cube, but I wouldn't have put it in the diploidal class necessarily. So interesting. That's a little bit of homework for people to try and find out why cubes sit in each of those classes.
I'm wondering if it's to do with the face striations.
Yeah, well, it might be for that one, but why was it in the previous two?
Yeah.
There's obviously got to be a difference there.
Give me a clear sign, for God's sakes.
Sorry,
Do they have two? Because diploid, dip 2.
Yeah.
So does it mean they've got two halves the same? I'm completely lost.
No, I don't know, Sheila. I don't know.
I just got a picture of a nice alum crystal up on my other computer,
Uh,
and it looked like you could chop it in two halves, similar, same, but
but you can do that with a cube, so
yeah,
or an octahedron. So I don't know.
yeah.
There's
I
obviously
don't
got
know
to, there's got to be a reason for it, but I haven't
what's
been
a
able to find.
ploid? Might be what a ploid is.
I don't know.
Now we're on the right.
All right, the next one's a gyroidal
Yeah.
class, and there's only 10 minerals in this one, all of them rare. And I have a quick look through there. I've got Petsite. It's probably the only one that I've got, but that wouldn't have in crystals anyway, probably. So, but it is interesting that at one time cuprite was considered to be in this class, but now it's back in that first one, the hexoctahedral. Why that would have been put into this one and what makes it gyroidal, I don't know. So I cannot help on that one. And then the last one is this Hextetrahedral Class. Now that's a crystal form that I think I've seen. But again, I don't know that I could actually put it against any one of these representative minerals here. But it's still
in Gersdorfite. Nice silvery crystals.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have necessarily put it into here.
No,
I
not
probably
necessarily. No.
I would have looked at it as maybe as a tetrahedral sort of crystal or whatever.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
and you can see there's certainly a tetrahedral look about that.
Look, yeah.
So I think it's probably just interesting here. Pyrrhotohedron fits in this one as well. So there you go,
All
Paul.
right.
This one for Paul to follow up. Why is a pyrrhotohedron not? And I'll go back into diploidal. Oh, it is there. Why is it there and in here?
It's probably cursed.
Well, here's what the general form is. It's sometimes known as the tetrahedral pentagonal dodecahedron. It has 12 faces. So it's really interesting. And funnily enough, there's our cube again.
Yeah.
And that's
Makes
the
sense since it's the cubic system. So
yeah, exactly. But why is it in each one of the classes, Frank? If you interrupt, you're going to be given the homework to find out.
yeah, well, I will definitely have a look
Good.
because I never
good.
looked at the class before. So
Yes, it's your homework for the next few weeks.
good.
So having a look at this list here, we've got Gersdorfite, Almanite. That's probably about the only ones that I'd actually, maybe Langbeinite. They're probably the only ones that I'd have in my collection. The rest of them, a lot of them I haven't even heard of.
Melanite. Melanite.
No, I don't know what that one is.
Yeah, and that's a double L. That's not right, is it?
That's millenniite. It's double
Oh.
I as well.
Ah,
So it's probably an Italian
Oops.
mineral.
yeah.
It did say they were rare. Anyway, so comes down to, okay, how do we use this information? And we said up front, Paul, you would have missed this, but basically as mineral collectors, what I actually posed to everybody was, why should we worry about it? What does it mean to mineral collectors?
Because it's going to be on the exam, obviously.
Exactly. And there's really only one answer that we could come up with, which
Thanks,
is
Paul.
it's just one of the aspects of identifying minerals or identifying what they're not. And apart from that, there's probably not really anything else as mineral collectors, certainly in this group, that we would look to actually utilize it for. So anyway, we're going to look at a few examples. So cuprite, and we can see here that we've got an octahedral crystal. It's quite a nice one from Spring Creek. And it's modified by this particular face here, which I think is probably the trapezohedron face, but I'm not 100% certain on that.
There's not a lot of choices there, are there, really?
No, it looks like it's the wrong angle for it to be a dodecahedron.
Yes, not it's too steep.
It is.
Oh,
too
it's not
steep.
steep enough to be that one.
Correct. So that's the only one really that I can pick. It may not be, but there may be others over and above these ones that we've seen here. But that's the only one that I could actually pick on it. But obviously, I would look at that as being predominantly just an octahedral crystal. I'd go by the color, the association, and whatever, and I'd say, yeah, that's a cuprite.
Yeah.
That's a fairly easy one. And dragging a few cuprite crystal drawings out of Goldsmith, you can see here there's a nice clean octahedron, a cube, some combinations here. Then you've got some weird ones. This I would not probably even pick as being cubic. I would probably look at that and say that looks more monoclinic than cubic. And then over this side, what the hell is that? And that one. So it's not always, and this is why I wanted to go through these, it's not always going to be that clear cut. Even if you're using this as a way of helping to identify something. And cuprite obviously is, that's what everybody knows anyway, but it could be, let's say you've got an unknown one.
We don't have anyone with the specialty of crystallography in our groups, I think. So
No, I know. But my main point again, Frank, is do you need it?
yeah.
So anyway, just throw this up to say, you will see ones like that. You will see hoppered ones like that. You will see cuprite crystals like that. I don't think I've ever seen anything that looks like these. I don't remember seeing any that look like these, but they just might be some rare form. A good thing with this particular book is that there is an index that says where these things are from. I haven't looked them up yet. I might have to do that.
That columnar one.
Yep.
I'm just trying to work out where the cubic faces are.
Well, that looks like an octahedral face.
Yeah.
These are probably, or these ones.
But the fact
that
that column looks like it's meant to represent a hexagonal cross section. The only way you can get a hexagonal cross section is by going down the 111 axis.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So I suspect that one of those top faces is actually the cubic face.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Which one?
Yeah. That's the next question.
Yeah.
That's the one that's going to be on the exam.
Yeah.
If
I've
I'm the
never
one
passed
coming
an exam in my life, so I'm not going to start now.
Anyway, I wanted to put these up as a bit of a poser for people as well. So I think it's generated a bit of interesting discussion, which is good.
It's kind of fun that the cubic system is the simplest of all the systems, and yet have a look.
Exactly. This is a really interesting one here. You have a look at some of these faces, and you can probably pick
Oh,
about
yeah.
4 different forms, I reckon, out of that one. So
Yeah, so that's
But
got the octahedral faces modified with one of
Others.
the other forms.
or
It
more
gets,
than one.
yeah. Are you sure this is not a faceting class? Sorry, I'm interrupting. Who was?
I was just, the shapes on that figure 90, they're all,
Yeah.
if you rotate them, like they all match.
Yes.
If you know what I mean, the top
Yeah, but
on the top.
you can
and
see the access points on that
Yeah.
one, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
there's a
quite
link.
obvious.
Yeah.
That one you can definitely pick as cubic. But
Cubic, yeah.
these might be tetra. What's the rare form for fluorite? Has these sort of faces on it. But on the cube face,
Tetrahexahedral.
that's it. Tetrahexahedron. That looks like that sort of a look to it. So yeah, it's a bit odd.
Is there an example of what it might, what might be?
Well, it's a cuprite.
Oh, it's still a cuprite.
Yeah,
Oh, still a
all of these are cuprites.
yeah. right.
If you take the big long fat crystal, was it
This one?
80,
88.
88?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, what we're seeing is one half of it, and the other side will be identical, won't it?
Yeah, but
Potentially, yeah.
six-sided.
Yeah, yeah.
It can be.
Yeah,
but
it will
it's should
be. Yeah,
hexagonal,
and this
so
is
that's really-
this is what we're missing out. The other side is so. But if it was another shape, if it was when it fell into another class,
Everything else is
wouldn't be.
everything else. You can't see the basic
Yeah.
100 face on that, can you?
They've all got. I mean, I don't know about 0, 0, but they're all back to front. You know, you can turn them around and you'd see the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so
That's
it
what
may
it is.
it
They've
may
got-
be the way this has been drawn as well. That what Goldsmith did was he extracted crystal drawings from all of the literature that he had available to him, and this was one that was in a publication
Yeah.
somewhere. Now it might be that it's actually it does look hexagonal, but it may not be.
Yeah, but it could have 8 sides, but it's whatever it is, it's going to be the same. The other
Yeah, if you
side,
turn it.
and when you
Yeah.
turn it, yeah,
It may even
It does.
Go on,
So-
go on, Paul.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, that representation to me looks hexagonal.
Yeah.
And as I was saying, if you look down the right axis on a cubic system, you'll get hexagonal crystals.
yeah.
But it also
Yeah.
mied be a
But that
twin.
face has only got five edges to it, so they aren't hexagonal, are they?
No, but they're
No.
truncated by another
Yeah.
face.
If you look at
yeah.
like figure 9 on the left, that the faces are hexagonal, or some of them.
Down here, yes. 1, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, 6.
So
Yeah.
you just tap the corners enough, you stop getting the cube. And
So this one here, though, if
I
you
mean,
look at this line, this edge here, that actually looks like a twin plane.
I think
Yeah.
they foreshortened it.
Goes in a bit there. Yeah, well, it may be. Because
I mean, if the labeling is consistent, if you have a look at figure 86, you've got the D planes
Yep.
on the edges, and you've got the D planes in figure 88 on the hexagonal sides,
Yeah.
there and there, yeah.
which
here.
would match. So if you rotated 86 so that you're looking down the small hexagonal corner, you get that kind of shape of the
Yeah.
farthest edges.
The other thing that it might be on this one is if you look at on 86, this A face here might be that small that it doesn't show up
Yes.
on this one.
Yes.
Yeah. All got. I'm cheating actually, because when you put up like gyroidal, for example, on my other computer, I put up web mineral thingy.com isometric gyroid, and it shows where people have the paper model for them, and
Yes.
that's worth looking at.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's a
because you've
lot of
got-
fun.
Yeah, and you can actually get an idea how everything fits together.
Yeah,
Well, it
this-
fits the fact that it does fit together.
There's
And,
absolutely nothing quite like building out these shapes to
Yeah,
give you
yeah.
a visceral appreciation of how they work.
Yeah, I think I'll stick to the cube.
Maybe I can be of a little help here.
I love that. Yeah.
I
It's
have
trying to find-
an article that is a presentation on fluorides, and fluoride is cubic, as you know. It's a presentation that was held in our Dutch Clara group, and it explains all the around 20 different forms of crystal shapes of fluoride, and especially the combinations and how they form together. So a lot of different shapes, but even more shapes, because some shapes combine with other shapes.
Yes. Yeah.
And this article is very helpful, so I could make it. I could send it to you, Steve, as you can put it on air.
Yep. If that's okay by the owners of it, that's fine. I can do that.
That's me.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, if that's okay with you, Hank, I can definitely do it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. The point here is that I'm trying to make is that, you know, it's cubic, which is the easy one, but it's not
Symmetry,
necessarily
yeah.
that easy.
Mm.
So let's have a look at tetrahedrite. So there's a nice tetrahedron sitting over the side. Well, it's a modified one. And this is from Tawong in New South Wales. And I think this might be a trice tetrahedron. Which is this one, because you've got these additional faces. But again, it's then, are these edges, these faces here, are they these ones, or are they modified from something else again? So because you can get all of these combinations, it can be very difficult to actually pick which one it's going to be. Excuse me.
It's
And again-
tetrahedral. So
Sorry?
it is definitely tetrahedral.
Yes, definitely tetrahedral. So then we look at some of the ones from Goldsmith, and yep, we've got tetrahedral crystals here. These are tetrahedral. What the hell's that?
Yeah.
What's this one? What's this one? So what's this one? They are not tetrahedral crystals, but they're in this this group.
And yet, yeah, heavily modified.
They're very heavily
Yeah.
modified.
So if you
Yeah.
have a look at figure 22 versus figure 63, and you look at the terminations faces, you can see that termination face.
Yep.
In the pointy ends.
Yep, it's
Yeah.
just somebody's grabbed hold of the crystal and squished it.
What you've got to remember here is that this is the simplest system by axes and angles, but that gives it the most symmetry,
Yes.
which makes the
Yes.
most forms possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally agree, Jim. It's interesting. Anyway.
Just while we're looking at that elongated one,
Yep.
The other thing I was going to mention about cuprite is, of course, chalcotrichtite,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
which is, like,
Yeah.
yay!
Yes.
Just
well,
when you thought you had it sorted.
yeah, we're coming to that in a short while as well. so-
I'm sorry, I stole your thunder
No,
again.
that's all right. Anyway, let's have a look at a third example here. This is pyrite. And these are pyritohedrons, but with striated faces, which is interesting. And so this is, it comes into the diploidal class as isometric pyritohedron. And if you notice there, we've got a little corner modification on it as well. So there's obviously another form that's also coming into it. But again, when we look at pyrite, this is from Goldsmith. What the hell's that? I have never seen a pyrite that looks anything like that, or this one. And these are drawn from actual crystals by the original crystallographers or mineralogists back in the day. They've taken and probably used a goniometer to calculate all of the angles and faces and whatever. And then Goldsmith's just drawn on those from various people. But you know, you look at these three over this side, and how many of you could actually see a crystal that looked like that and say, that's a pyrite?
Yeah, so that 402 crystal, the story that tells me is about differential growth rates. You've got something limiting the growth on the bottom half and not limiting it on the top half, or vice versa.
Yep. So
Or it looks like somebody cut off the bottom.
yeah.
Yes, nice cleavage plane you got there.
What,
Shame if
what
somebody
are
just lose that bit.
striations?
Striations are
They go on both. They go on different ways, look, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
that's
do.
yes.
Yeah.
If you,
That's
you
what makes me think that pyrite has its own class effectively.
almost, yeah. If you grab a striated one in your collection, Martin, which you undoubtedly you'll have, if you have a
Yeah.
look at each of the faces, each of the cube faces, you'll see that the striations go in a different way on each one.
Okay, I never noticed it before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very characteristic. All right, some cautions. So, as we've seen, there's quite a few things that come into this. Now, first of all, minerals don't always form crystals. So even if you're using this as a form of identification, you may not be able to. Crystals are not always perfect. You know, we've seen a few of those drawings there that may be perfect crystals, but they don't look like the textbook perfect crystal. But you'll get things, as Paul was saying, you'll get preferential growth, you'll get lots of other things that will distort the crystal in various ways. We've got the cubes in 4 of the classes. So how would you determine which one other than the pyrite striations? We've got combinations of forms which make it different. Preferential growth, such as on pyrite, cuprite, the chalcopyrite that Paul mentioned. Gold, you'll see elongated gold crystals as well. Pyrite you can have in thin, narrow, and basically what's happened there is it's preferential growth on one of the axes. Then you get pseudo-cubic crystals such as chabasite, which the angles on chabasite is slightly under 90 degrees, but it's 89 point something. So they look, the basic form, they can look like cubes. And of course, chalcopyrite that we mentioned before, which can look like a tetrahedral crystal. Then of course, we also have pseudomorphs. Now I've got a beautiful pyritohedron from Burra in South Australia that is actually bornite, but it was originally pyrite. And what's happened is the bornite has replaced the pyrite atom for atom and left the form exactly as it was. And then you've got twinning and polymorphs as well. So there's a number of different things that make it really difficult, can make it really difficult for you to actually utilize the knowledge that you've obviously learned today. And just a few more examples here. So these are also pyrites, that give a good range of different forms. So you can see here cube faces, but it's essentially a sphere. Now, this can go to the degree of being almost just a totally smooth sphere almost. You wouldn't use cubes or cubic mineral system, crystal system, I should say, as a definitive identification. You use other things. Here we've got pyrite. Sorry?
I just wonder if that grew in due to biological conditions.
Quite possibly, actually.
Yeah, because we get something similar at Greystones.
Yeah, a lot of these ones come from coal mines as well.
Yeah,
so,
that's why it's jumbled.
Yeah, I collected a few similar to this from Western collieries in Western Australia when I was working over there. They didn't last very long, unfortunately, but they were sort of bumpy, rounded pyrite masses. Here we've got pyrite wire, so it's the elongated growth, and you can see it's changed direction a few times. Here we've got octahedral crystals, which is not that common. Here's another elongated pyrite, but it's not turned into a wire. This one here looks like a twin. It also looks like a diploid. Or is it just a squash pyrite? Don't know.
or just fractured in an interesting way?
It's intact. They're all actual. They're not cleavages or fractures.
Okay.
So it's actual crystal
Cool.
faces. It's just a very unusual one. And then you get obviously the pyrite suns.
Once you have so that pyrite sun and the ball from China,
Mhm.
they really confuse things in some ways, because you're not actually seeing the form that's dictated by the crystallography. You're seeing the form that's dictated by the growth behavior.
Yes, correct. That's another one of the cautions, I suppose.
Yeah,
which is a good point. Okay, so where do we go from here? Now that you know everything there is to know, except for the homework about the isometric system, has it changed your views on it? Are you going to use this knowledge? Are you going to do anything different?
No.
Not
Well,
sure yet. I've got homework.
I'm glad to say that I'm more confused than ever. So now I've got some reading to do.
My work here is done.
My son has aspirations to be a mineralogist. I know he's getting a master's now, and he's just constantly disappointed that I have no idea how this works. No matter how much he shows me, I still don't get it.
Maybe the thing to do is to just look at our material more
Hey there.
closely. Even if we can't put a system on it, but just picking up every mineral's got a jizz. I call it a jizz, you know, like with your birding or whatever. And the more we look at them, and looking at them properly, not just saying, oh yeah, that's cuprite, and then, but looking at them more carefully, and that will help us maybe in the future.
If you think about it, even with Martin now knowing about the striations on different directions on the pyrite faces, it means that you'll now look at pyrite in a different way, Martin.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, like that.
Very good.
But why
I was just trying to find a picture. I've got one fluorite from Arispe in Sonora. It was part of a specimen in the Smithsonian, and a friend of mine who died earlier this year wrote to the Smithsonian and did an exchange with them for a part of the specimen, and they actually obliged by sending him a piece over, and he sent them a model of the specimen, and it's purported to have all the crystal faces of the cubic system on the one fluorite crystal, repeated several times.
That's kind of fun.
But the picture I've got is pretty crappy, so I'll if you want me to show, I'll try and find it again.
Yep.
Yeah,
go on. Find it right quick.
I've got two comments.
Yeah, go on, Jim.
The pyrite suns are probably biogenic in origin.
Yeah.
And so therefore the crystals are microns in size. And on the copper wire, you notice that all of the offsets are at 90 degrees.
Yep.
That's the way you can tell that that wire is composed of cubic crystals.
Yep. It wasn't copper actually, Jim. It was another pyrite.
Okay, well.
Yep. But so it's same thing. Obviously, you can see that with chalcochromite and with copper as well.
Share the screen.
Yeah, go for it, Martin. You should be able to. Yep.
That's the specimen.
Oh wow.
It needs to be rephotographed. This was done as a single shot on the microscope, so it's got to be done again at some point. But these are supposed to have every single form of the cubic system on the one crystal.
Good grief.
I forget the number of faces he said was on there, but it was. And apparently this is in the Smithsonian, the specimen, the main specimen is.
It'll be 56, Martin.
56.
Yeah, and a very common mine called the Eagleschlapp mine in Germany.
All right.
Yeah, I've
You
got
also,
some.
you also get them at Eastwell Pool as well, Cornwall.
All right. Very interesting.
Yeah. Erwig Peckmelt gave me a fluorite that's a sphere from somewhere. I think it was in Germany. And if you really look at it in detail, you can see all these very tiny faces on it. But it like at 10x, it looks like a sphere.
Yeah, you can see the,
Lee,
Hmm. Now you just need to find one that's twice the size.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's just an observation, really. I just, what you've just been saying, that was very interesting. But another rephotographic job needed.
if I may share the screen.
Yep.
So this is a pyrite from Arizona. And one of the things that I was hoping that you could see is that the crystals are all curved.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now that I find really hard to explain.
I
Yes.
have some fluorite that does that, where they get
Yeah.
in the corners, they grow out, and it was just the growth conditions is what I heard.
Yeah.
It's
So-
probably an impurity.
Yeah, well, there's definitely something going on at a very fine scale that's disrupting the growth, which could just be a whole lot of atomic scale defects, or it could be that there's something interfering with the growth, like you said, that's causing these curves.
You know, galena can have up to several weight % silver in it.
Exactly.
And when it does, the crystal faces, the main crystal faces become curved.
And I certainly know you get, like in lepidolite, you get curved mica because there's a mismatch on the atomic scale. Actually, the mismatch at the atomic scale with mica has to be so small that it can survive to large scales for you to be able to see it. Otherwise, it just forms microscopic plates. So
Here's one, Jim, that sort of thing you were talking about, German
Yes,
fluorite.
exactly.
And if you do, it's not the best of photos, but you can see that it's not perfectly smooth. So, but
God.
that's a tiny crystal. So,
When I first saw those, I thought they were just little balls of silica.
yeah. Yep. Well, so, some of
I just
the
changed my background to diploidal pyrite.
excellent, well done. You get a gold star there, Steve. If you look at some of the fluorites in some of the slag localities as well, some really, really weird ones there.
Oh,
So,
super, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
all right.
I've got one in granite from the Isle of Skye. And, they're really elongated fluorites.
Yep.
They're like got a colour zoning running through them as well.
All right. So let me just do a quick recap. Frank, you have homework.
Yeah, I know.
Paul, you have
I'm big
homework.
into the class. So.
Martin, you have homework.
Right.
how many more sessions do we have on crystal systems, do you think?
Well,
6.
it depends if we have volunteers or not, because I can't do them all.
At least 6. At least 6.
Yeah, at least 6.
At least 6. Yeah, cool.
Did everybody think this was a good session the way that it was
Excellent.
presented?
Excellent.
Yeah, yeah.
I said it was
Yeah,
one
Not
that
much wiser, but it's very good.
No, I can't say many wiser.
I really struggled to work out the best way of actually pulling it together. So
I think your way going with the interactive part was good. And
I found it a bit easy to look at the Miller indices on it and then imagine the numbers. That seemed to make things a little bit clearer. And I do use that occasionally if I'm looking at crystals to try and look for the Miller indices numbers.
Yeah,
That's a whole other presentation.
Yeah,
that is, yes.
Yeah.
That is.
Yes,
that
it is.
I think the easiest way to do this, though, is to find a crystallographer to do the presentation.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so you have homework as well, Doug.
You have just volunteered yourself.
Well, I'm definitely going to shut up about having studied crystallography twice then.
It was the second time you had to go back to apologize, Paul.
Yeah. Once for materials engineering and once for geology.
Right. Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say is, especially with the indices systems and starting with the cubic systems and the modified faces, when you start looking at the other systems that have different angles or different lengths, you get the same sorts of modifications in a more limited way because you've don't have the same number of axes of symmetry.
Yeah.
But now you've got like a rhombohedra that's modified rather than a cube that's modified.
Yeah.
So if you don't start with the isometric stuff, that gets very confusing because it's modified angles on modified angles.
Yeah.
This is the place to start.
Well, I started because all
Very
the
good,
books
very
started
good.
cubic anyway. So
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why. It's
Yeah.
the first system. It's the geometrically it's the least complicated, except it's also
But
the
then
most
again, the most
complicated.
forms.
Yes. Yes.
all right. Well,
I found Rutley's was the easiest one to sort of follow initially. But
well, I definitely recommend you having a look at Don Peck's articles on
Yeah.
the Index.
yeah, will do. Yeah.
They are really well done. So
Yeah.
I'll put the links in
Okay.
in the comments area of the YouTube thing. I'll get that up. So all right. Well, thank you very much for all attending, and
Oh,
apologies
thank you.
for it
Thank
being
you.
delayed a bit. But
Thank you for all the work, Steve.
oh,
Yeah.
did- I try. All right,
Oh,
and
All
see
right.
you
So go on a month in 4 weeks.
4 weeks time. Yes.
Thanks a lot, Steve.
Okay.
All right. See ya.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.